All right. Well, it is noon, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time today. Thank you for joining us for this upcoming webcast, Save Money by Spending Money, and we're going to dive in the value of independent advisors. Before we get started, here's a quick look at the agenda. We'll do some brief introductions. We'll spend the majority of the time with our guest today, Rich Farrell, and then we'll have some open time for question and answer at the end. If you do have a question at any point during the presentation, please go ahead and use the Q&A feature through Zoom, or you can submit those questions directly through the chat. A little bit about Liberty Technology Advisors. We are a 100% independent management consulting company. This is our 25th year in business. We've been open since 1995, and our sole purpose is to improve our clients' business performance, systems, and business processes. We like to say that we want to help you via technology. We don't want to replace technology for technology's sake. We want to take advantage of the new technology. We want to help improve those business processes to help you get the most out of your business. And our team of objective consultants who are very experienced, we like to tout that we have an average experience of 20 years for consultants, and they're really working with you side by side along every step of the project. Some of the services that LTA offers. Obviously, you're here today to talk about ERP software, selection, implementation, project management. And that's one of the core aspects of our business. We also look at business process reengineering or business process execution. We offer some technology advisory services such as IT roadmaps, project management, cloud strategy, and we also do some value-added services like interim CIO, CTO, organizational change management, and project rescue. But without further ado, the man of the hour today is Rich Farrell. Here's a quick look at Rich's bio. Rich has decades of experience and has successfully led multiple ERP implementations over his time with LTA, and I'm happy to go ahead and turn it over to Rich. So without further ado, Rich.
Hi, thanks, Brad, for that very generous introduction. I was the handsome devil on the previous slide, although nowadays I'm sporting this awful COVID beard, so don't be too surprised if you see me on the street. But enough about me. Let's talk about how we're going to save you money by spending money. How about the next slide, Brad? It's counterintuitive, right? And that's really kind of the whole hook behind why we tried to get you to come here is how are we going to save money by spending money, and what the heck are we going to do with LTA, and why does that all make sense? Well, I just ask that you just kind of set aside your disbelief and let's jump right in. And I'll tell you, by spending money on LTA or really any reputable third-party consultant, you're actually going to save a lot of money in the long run. And the next slide is kind of the first step down. How you doing that? The truth, right? I really wanted to use a better Jack Nicholson slide, but the legal department here, they jumped in on my copyright issues, so we'll have to make do with that. But it's from A Few Good Men, right? That quintessential scene where Jack Nicholson says, "You can't handle the truth." Well, I think you can, and that's why you're here. So why LTA, and why are we given this thing about how we can save you money by hiring us to come in and help your ERP system selection or technology programs? I got to tell you, we aren't necessarily the smartest guys in the room or the gals in the room, but well, with one exception, we do have one polymath on staff. He's pretty darn smart. But the thing is, we really know ERP inside and out, and we know what things to look for, where the pitfalls are going to be, where the tiger traps on it, and we can help you implement an ERP system as one of your quasi employees. I like to think of us as not as much a consultant as that beloved coach or personal trainer that you have. That you have a goal that you want to take. You're just not going to get there on your own, and And I got to tell you, that's true for me and these home workouts. As flashy as they are on your iPhone, there's just something about that human touch, that human dynamic, where you have an outsider that comes in and kind of pushes you and helps you attain goals that you think you could never get on your own, and walks you through to the finish line. And that's really what our secret sauce is. It's also, we have what I like to call quiet confidence. We don't have bluster or bravado. I mean, it's not the kind of blowhard confidence that a lot of people think of, but it's really, it's the ability of doing the same thing lots and lots of times and just knowing what works and how to make things happen. We're not saying that things, won't take a side road every once in a while, but we're used to that and we know how to deal with that, and we know how to get projects back on track and back on scope and budget. As I said, after you've done this enough time, you really kind of know where the pitfalls are going to be, where it's going to be the hard spots of the project, the common mistakes that almost every project team makes and almost every steering committee makes, and we help you avoid those, help you mitigate them, and sometimes if they can't be mitigated or avoided, we find the most direct path to get through them so that we force through them and we get things done. We know how to run quality workshops and how to facilitate a process, right? So uh, we like to come in and work side by side with your employee team and your project team and work with the vendor team and make sure that you are getting what you need to know, and more on that. We also have folks that help you optimize your business processes. A really key part of our offering is the business process reengineering, where in conjunction with a software selection, we'll come in and our team will look at your current state, look at your current pain points, and because of their insights and experience from walking from the shop floor all the way up to the C-suite, that they kind of help you create a sustainable future state. And then we kind of configure the new ERP system or the new software to kind of follow that future state so that you'll get the most value out of everything and to help you optimize your business processes. I can't say this again. You see the bottom bullet is we put clients first, second, and third. We really do. We are your advocate and champion. We work for you, and in that spirit, we also play well with others. I mean, typically we work as part of a three-sided triangle of the project team, the vendor team, and us. We collaborate both horizontally and vertically. Uh, we take feedback and turn it into insights. We challenge the steering committee and the leadership team to be involved and actively help manage the project. We challenge the project team to do what needs to be done and help them when we have tight spots and mentor them and get them through it, and also kind of keep tabs on them and keep a good eye on them to make sure that they're not getting burned out, that they're not being asked to do more than they really could do. And we like to act in a spirit of cooperation and not conflict. And I think that's really what we do, and that is the truth. And again, as I go on with this, don't take my word for it. By all means, please reach out to Brad and talk to some of our foreign clients, and you'll be able to see whether or not we're telling you the truth or not. Next slide, Brad. Let's talk about why ERPs fail. I mean, there's some really scary statistics out there. If you do a Google search for it, they'll say that typically about 30% of private sector ERPs have failed, and over half of public sector ERPs have failed. And there's a lot of smart people looking at that and trying to figure out why that is. And they've come up with a list of 10. But I just want to focus on the top 3, and I'm going to nest these ideas as we go through the rest of the presentation. The top 3 in no particular order is lack of executive and management buy-in, and that we're meaning that the leadership in the company or the organization, they select a software package and then they kind of outsource it. They push it down to the project team, they push it down to the consultants, down to the system integrators, and aren't really involved in the day-to-day or month-to-month processes. And at the end of the day, you really get a software that's configured for the consultants and the integration team and not necessarily for your company. And it leads into a lot of heartache and misunderstandings, and typically you can trace a lot of ERP failures to the executive team was just hands off with it, and it was someone else's problem, and they treated it like the IT department's project or the consulting team's project. The second bullet there, one that's near and dear to my heart, is selecting a software that is not aligned with your key requirements or your business. And there's a lot of reasons why companies select software that may not be a good fit, and we'll talk about that. But that is the second reason why a lot of implementations fail. And then the third one, and I think is probably the most critical one, is organizational change, not managing change, kind of mandating changes to their environment from the top down without taking into consideration what they think about it, or letting them know what's in it for them, or at least painting a future worth having, right? It's just change for change sakes. And I got to tell you, I've been at the end user side of that kind of a coin. I was in the Navy for a long spell, and the Navy famously, or maybe infamously, went to SAP, and we received no training on that. We got a thick manual. I remember it's very clearly as the day before a 4th of July weekend, and we were told we're going to go live, the following Tuesday, and it just didn't work well. I mean, we did enough, I guess, not to get yelled at, but really not enough to make the system work, and it was just a terrible experience. So I really understand the need for organizational change, and organizational change, it can take many forms. It's not just sitting around in a circle eating cookies and singing kumbaya. It's really creating trusted relationships with your clients, with the executive team, with the vendor team, getting their viewpoint and providing them a reasonable idea and a reasonable path forward on why they want to change and why it's in their best interest. So that's kind of a long-winded. There's actually 7 other reasons that I won't cover. We'll just stick with those. But there's the at the bottom, you can see my footnote on where I grabbed that. But those are fairly universal kind of reasons why ERPs fail. So let's jump into the next slide there, Brad. Let's talk about the money saving activities, because that's why you're here. You're not here to hear me bloviate about ERP failures. You want to know about the money. So money saving activity 1. We talked about that, about selecting the right software package. And I'm trying to keep with a movie theme here, and Rocky 3 was incredibly important to me growing up. So there's Mr. T, and you probably got a really good deal on your software package. And you think that you're saving a lot of money, usually because there's some sort of a connection there with a software vendor, usually the brother-in-law or a sister-in-law, or an old college buddy or a golfing buddy or something like that. But it's just not a perfect fit. But hey, you think it's overshadowed by all the money you're saving. But typically, when it doesn't work out, it's because you chose the wrong software. And here at LTA, we have a tried and true methodology to kind of help you do it. We try to start off and look at the big picture first and create as simple a plan as we can. I mean, I talked about business process reengineering. We want to review your current processes, look for areas of potential improvement, and then create a future state in each of those different departments. And then, you can start looking at what are the things we really need to address for the software selection. First and foremost, who does the evaluation, right? You really need to identify folks that are going to be best able to not only devote the time to assessing the needs, but also the time to evaluate possible solutions. Look at some of the limitations in your current processes, and there's a business cost to that as well too. You want to make a business case for getting the new ERP system. That's first and foremost. You want to get a return on that investment, because it can be a considerable amount of money, both in your capital and in employees' time as well too. I think that the thing I really want to say is you want to look beyond just the price tag and think about the impact that software could have on your business or overall operations. I mean, if you've plateaued, maybe it's time to consider looking at your processes and what you need to do differently to kind of compete, right? What is your timeline, right? That's a very important one. I mean, one of the most common things we get is a lot of folks want to go live, and I think a very challenging short time. They'll contact us in May or June, and they'll want to go live by January 1st, and it's just it's a tough thing to do. So you need to look at your timeline, and we will help you kind of right size what a good timeline is, and kind of the pros and cons of that. I mean, you can go really fast, but you're going to be short sheeting training. You'll need a dedicated project team. There's a lot of things. Or you could go longer. You could part-time the project team and stuff like that, but you're going to pay for it longer. So we will have those things. When it comes to software, there's no one-size solution that fits all. So we will look at your priorities, right? And We'll look at all the trade-offs and walk you through the different multiple solutions from different software developers that meet your requirement. We typically have a list where we have key and unique requirements, and we go through those functional requirements with the vendors. And we'll only bring back vendors that can demonstrate their software, your requirements in their software in a real-time demonstration. That's one of the things we'll do. And the next thing is a short list. We'll have a list of 3 to 4 vendors that will come in and do a demonstration, and we'll have them walk a day in the life of your company in their software real time, so you can kind of narrow down on the ones that do that. And then once we validate your short list, we usually get it down to 1 or 2 kind of contenders, and we help you make the decision. So that leads into the next slide. After you've selected the best software, you want to negotiate, right? And negotiations, I think, are one of the most undervalued things in the whole ERP kind of life cycle. But first and foremost, it's really important to recognize the importance of ERP vendor negotiations and have someone that has done this before and kind of knows all the tricks of the trade to kind of help you do it. And that's one thing I think where LTA shines is that we have folks that have been doing this for 25 years. They know the different costing models, and if they're not experts on it, they have a network of resources. You know, I was just on a call earlier today where we talked about Microsoft costing and how really difficult it is to figure out what the true cost is for a Microsoft project for different size companies. And our managing partner, Joel, has got an incredible Microsoft network where he can go through and, for example, talk to real experts on Microsoft pricing to get the best thing for you. And that's how we work, is we have a web of friends, because we try to do the best that we can, and we maintain great relationships with vendors and clients, and that way it can help us with our future negotiations. And our good behavior in the past actually gets paid forward to where we were able to do this too. In the past, you know, negotiations typically focused on one-time capital costs associated with purchasing an on-premise software solution. But today, I mean, everything's going to the cloud, and you have to really kind of focus on recurring annual subscription costs that sometimes go into perpetuity, right? So there are really long-term considerations that you have to think about that will eclipse that whole one-time cost of an on-premise solution. So in short, you know, the negotiation process can have long-ranging impacts on your bottom line, and you want to make sure that you negotiate wisely, right? You do have leverage with your ERP vendors. You may not know it. Your size and number of users equates to how much profits your vendor can make, how much profits you can make. If you come from a company that has name recognition, I mean, they'll often bend over backwards to win it because they all like marquee customer names. If you go with a smaller tier 2 or industry focused vendor, you'll probably have more negotiation leverage. So a lot of things go into us, and I recommend that you find an expert that has walked down this path a number of times, and they'll help you leverage your position with the negotiation. Gosh, let's talk about software subscription fees. They're often what we call low-hanging fruit and the biggest opportunity for cost savings. This is also the area where a lot of vendors make the most money, and the cost implications can be really significant for you. So depending on where you fall on the spectrum, you know, the number of vendors, your size of revenue, your number of transactions, that kind of stuff, your annual costs will go into the future for a very long time. And you need to recognize the magnitude of that reality, right? So incremental costs for ERP vendors are very low. So license costs are about as close to pure profit as you'll see. So let us help you work those, and not just negotiate your current contract, but lock in the addition of future users or modules, so that and lock in as well as annual increases in maintenance fees and stuff, to make sure that you have a clear path, right, going forward. We always tell you, be really leery of one-time only year-end, quarter-end, or month-end discounts that will expire after a certain period of time. And we also will help you kind of right-size your software, because the cost of unused shelfware is much greater than any cost savings you're going to get. You really don't want to buy too much or get more than you need. So the other thing too is I would caution you to watch for attempts to kind of preempt the negotiation process. Sometimes ERP vendors will get you to try and sign the contract without engaging a third party to help you negotiate, and they will go through great lengths to make sure you don't involve kind of an outside agency. Be wary of that. I mean, I'm not going to badmouth anyone here. I mean, but they have subtle tactics, like they will focus more on aligning your internal teams rather than engaging outside help. And the thing to remember is LTA is on your side, or a third-party consulting team that does a lot of contract negotiations. They're here to protect your interests and ensure you don't get backed into something financially or contractually that's hard to get out of. And I'm telling you, there's really very little risk in engaging outside help because the upside is so huge if you do, and the risks are potentially a lot larger if you don't. One last thing I'd like to say before I leave this topic is even if you do engage outside help to help you negotiate, please have someone in the legal world look at that. There are a lot of great firms out there that are comfortable with ERP related contracts and software contracts, and they can give that final scrub over the contract, the terms and conditions, and the intent of those negotiations from a legal perspective. I mean, because this is a system that you could potentially be on for decades. I mean, it's worth the money to get legal counsel that specializes in ERP contract reviews to make sure that there aren't any time bombs in there that you don't know about. Finally, don't shortchange the whole negotiation process. It's a very important one that you're going to have to live with the results for many years to come. So make sure you take the time to get it right. And I know a few weeks of negotiations may seem really painful at the time, but it is a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. So I believe I've hit that topic enough. Brad, let's go on to money saving activity number 3. Active project management. Active project management, it's there to make sure your investment sticks, right? I mean, as I said before, LTA likes to take on a very hands-on kind of approach. We like to, before this whole COVID stuff started, and hopefully someday when the COVID restrictions lift, we like to be on site as much as possible, and like to walk the same ground as your project team, to be able to walk into the executive folks and talk to them when it's appropriate, as well as see how it's affecting the end users. So really, one of the reasons I talked about the ERP failure, we talked about the wrong software package, we talked about change management, we also talked about lack of upper management support. This is where I'm going to talk about that. At LTA, I'm, and if you get to know me and hear me talk, I have all these colorful sayings I like to say, but I say we're the milk in the cereal bowl that brings everything together. Where the project team's the bowl, the vendor team's the cereal, we're the milk that kind of makes things work, and we're the catalyst for success, right? We can help you do the heavy lifting and kind of ease your burden because we've done it over and over and over again. We really know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and who probably should do it. And we will help your team climb that mountain. That's why I think we're kind of ERP Sherpas for your project, because we've done the summit several times. We know all the great hiking trails. We can carry a little bit heavier load because we're used to doing it, and we can help you create effective project teams. We can help you create effective project governance. We will set up, facilitate, and run the steering committee meetings, the weekly project team meetings. We will be there in the workshops and remind people to take notes and to clue them in on issues that they really need to think about on configuring the system, because we've sat through the current state and the future state sessions, and we kind of understand where you want to go, and we can pay attention to little things that can become larger issues later because we've seen it in the past. One of the things, it's a dirty little secret I'll talk about active project management too, is all of us have failed at some time in the past. We've been on a bad implementation, we've been on a bad project, and sometimes you got to fail to really learn a lesson and to make it stick. And I think some of our failures have made us much more adept in kind of looking for these issues and seeing the early signs of an issue and being able to know what works, because we've been in that hole before and we've known what it takes to climb out. One of the biggest issues I've seen in my past is training. A lot of times training tends to be an afterthought. It's rushed because the implementation's going long. The workshopping and configuration took a little bit long, and they still want to hit the same go live date. So they kind of short sheet training to kind of make the go live date. And this is where I will put my foot down. I mean, training is incredibly important. We'll talk about change management in the next slide, but training is the way you're really going to cement the bond between the new system and your project team and the end users. And it's not just high quality training, but it's the kinds of training, right? Some people learn through on the job. They like to get on the keyboard and see it right there on the dashboard and work through it. Other people's like a facilitator in the room walking them through the process. Still others like to watch videos at their discretion. And we help you craft a training program that suits your company, and it should be tailored to fit you like a suit. So just kind of keep that in mind. And we also help you set realistic expectations, right? The devil you know is much better than the one you don't know. And we provide that alignment between software configuration and business processes and flows. And for the final slide, I wanted to make sure I got to this before we ran out of time, is change management. We talked about how one of the big three reasons why they fail is no change management. So part of what we do and intertwined with our active project management is not just a focus on the hardware, but a focus on the peopleware, the people that will actually use the system and make it work. We want to see how your end users operate in every part of the business and focus on that touch point between the end user and the system and capture pain points, set expectations. And really, I think the key to change management is to forge that trusting relationship so that people know when you ask them to do something, you're just not doing it capriciously. There's actually a method to what you're doing, and being proactive, right? Being predictive. I found a good part of change management is being able to predict the hard times coming up or a particularly challenging spot and getting them prepared for it and telling them what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and then walking with them through the path until we get to the other side. And like I said, turning that feedback into insights and feeding that insight into implementation momentum to getting it going. One of the biggest things I like to do is articulate a case for change. First in thing is, what is in it for me? Why are we changing? More than just what's in it for the company. I mean, then increasing bottom lines, productivity, efficiency, all this kind of stuff. But what is in it for the employee, and make a change case for each group, right? Because the folks on the shop floor are going to have a different case for change than middle management, than the executive management, right? So part of that is to over communicate, tell them what the expectations are, the scope, the rollout strategy, implementation timelines, what is going to be expected of them, what they need to do when we call on them, and then give them feedback mechanisms. I always like to nominate a change agent in each department and almost in each work center, someone that they can go to, and that I really communicate with them and give them the talking points that we're going to do this week, and what's the monthly goals and the interim goals. We also help manage the people and the risk, right? So one of the key things about being on site and being embedded with your company is to be able to get to know each person and get to know, are they being right sized with what's asked for them. Typically, you'll get one or two superstars that I call them a supernova that will take on way too much. And eventually they're going to end up crashing, and it has sometimes really bad effects on the team. So I make sure that people are load balanced, that one person's not taking on too much, or that someone that could help the load is taking on a little bit more. And then finally, I always like to have a theory of victory, right? I like to paint an end state that has a better future for them now than maybe it does in the later. Maybe their better future is, instead of spending 10 hours of work because they're doing all this double work in manual processes and spreadsheets, they're actually able to go home in time and go to their kids' soccer game. Or, they're able to focus more on what they thought they would do in this, and being a business analyst and being predictive instead of just managing spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. Or the challenge of learning a system that's actually a pleasure to use and makes sense, and is intuitive and gives them the answers they want. So that's really my big pitch for how we're going to save you money, because all these activities, it costs twice as much to do it again a second time as if it does if you just do it right the first time. And that's my point, is do it right the first time. Bring in an outside agent, let them walk you through and train you through, because this is a really tough thing that a lot of folks haven't gone through in their work career. And we can show you kind of the best road ahead for that, and save you money along the way, instead of having to do it all again, or to backtrack and try and figure out where things went wrong and try and put things back on track again. So that's how my plan to save you money. I believe it's the bottom of the hour and it's time for questions, right, Brad?
Yes, it is. So I know we had one question come in, but if you have any other questions, please go ahead and submit those in the Q&A or the chat portal, and we'll get to those. Rich, the one that came in here was, it came in while you were talking about contract negotiations, and it was, do you specifically come in for just negotiations?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. You could bring us into your negotiations. We might take a little bit of time to get up to speed on your software package and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we will have folks that can parachute in and help you negotiate, or at least talk with your negotiation teams. I mean, there's three ways you can do it. You could do the negotiations all by yourself. You could have us work with your negotiating team and kind of give them the insights, the tips, things to think about, or warning signs, or you could let us do the negotiations for you and do it. But absolutely, we would be glad to come in and just handle your negotiations for you and try and wrangle the best deal. Now, I will say this. Of course, I'm not being a used car salesman, but it works better if we help you select the software package because we have a longer relationship with the vendor. But if you want us to just come in and let us do the negotiations, we're absolutely capable and would love to do that for you.
Great. Any other questions out there? Okay, well, if you do, please type them in. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. If you want to talk more about anything Rich covered today, or you're interested in just learning more about who we are and what we do, and if we can help your company, please reach out. Our emails are on the screen, as well as our phone numbers, and we are more than happy to talk through your project, talk through your company situation, and see if there's a fit for us to help. We did not have any other questions come in, so Rich, I'm gonna thank you for presenting, and thanks you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thanks, Brad.